everyone, and welcome to Or Something. It's the podcast where we each come and tell each other a story about the origins of something or something. I don't know. We're just doing whatever we want. We're talking about whatever we want. Deal with it. I'm Kristen, and this is Carla.
Hello.
And how's it going? Do we want to have like preamble beforehand, or do we just want to get right into it?
Yes, we do. I do.
Okay.
Except, oh great, my notes are on my phone, which I don't want to grab right now. Okay. Last time we were talking about the mac and cheese thing, and I was like, okay, so when was powdered cheese
created?
Yeah, and it sounded like it was kind of like around the same time as just the original mac and cheese because of the whole, I think it had to do with my fine research. No, but like the war rations kind of thing. So they wanted to have like dehydrated stuff.
Oh, okay.
Right. So then
because it did happen around that time, I think, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically, it coincided with the whole dehydration, like food craze or whatever the heck, like craze, like
now
it's a fad.
Now it's just like a commonplace thing, hey?
Yeah. So I thought, okay, yeah, orange cheese did exist. Cheese powder, I should say.
Yeah. Also, I think the funny thing that we need to mention about your stuff that you talked about, because you sent me a message like I don't know, a couple hours after we finished recording last week about your geek thing, that there's some kind of movie or something. Was it a movie? Or
so yeah, Guillermo del Toro, he has a new movie, which he said it's his first movie that doesn't have like a supernatural element to it, which is intriguing. It's based on a book, I forgot by who. Research is my finest strength.
Hey, people aren't coming here for accuracy.
Good, because that's not going to happen.
Anyway.
Yeah, especially based on my research today. Anyway, no, it's called Nightmare Alley, and I looked up the synopsis, on Wikipedia. It's just the original story, the book that it's based on, and right away they start describing like the freak show kind of geeks, and that it was like in the story specifically, I don't want to give anything away, but like they do talk about the geeks and how
they had to like kill animals or whatever, right?
Yeah, how they convinced basically like really like down and out people to, rely on them so much, like to get paid, basically to like enable their alcohol problem, right?
Okay.
And I really should have just read the synopsis.
No, I just think it's like such funny timing that you talked about that, and that like blew my mind so much that's where that term started, and that it started with a bunch of ineptitude, just the people who couldn't do anything else,
and just the desperate kind of like homeless, like drunkards, basically.
Yeah, because that's not at all the connotation with that word now at all. Like, it is so far from that. Although
there's geeks in the basement eating bats right now. What? Look up from the computer.
There probably are. There probably is a group of geeks that is like hardcore into living the life of the original geek. I bet you. You're out there. Hey, everybody. Let us know. We see you.
We feel you. I don't
we
have
support
any
you,
booze
or do
to give
we?
you. Yeah.
Please don't hurt animals.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. All right. Well, do you want to go first this week, or do you want me to go first?
I do want to go first.
Okay. Do it then.
That doesn't mean that I'm more prepared. I think I'm even less prepared this week. Because I forgot to do half of my research. I woke up this morning. I'm like, I'm so excited. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't research. So for the love of...
Did you look at more than one article on the internet?
I looked at many.
Okay, well then you're fine.
Most of them in the last half an hour. So everybody
Good,
enjoy.
So it's fresh.
Is it fresh? Okay, so...
You forgot.
Oh, if I'm ever talking too loud, just let me know. All right, so yesterday I was cleaning about like 6,000 pounds of parsley that I had to like dig out of the garden. I didn't know that parsley can just stay in the ground until basically winter and be totally fine.
Really?
No, I found that out after I dug out a whole row of parsley. And can I just say the smell of parsley, it's just too much when you have to like trim it. Because what I do is I wash it all, soak it, right? And then trim it and throw it in the freezer.
Okay, yeah.
Right? It's perfect. It's great. But it smells so strong. And so it's kind of like, you know, the aversion people have to cilantro. How
Yes,
it's like
I
that kind of
hate
soapy smell.
cilantro. It's
Yeah, but
disgusting.
parsley, like it's okay. Like I like the smell of it, but when it's just in abundance, it's kind of like it just assaults your nose and you're like, I'm gonna kill myself. Anyway.
Which is crazy because parsley is like the most nondescript. Like I do know the smell of it, but it takes quite a bit of it to actually smell anything, right? Like,
Right. And
to
this,
have a
'cause I was,
taste.
like snipping with scissors, like just, you know, over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
The whole kitchen just reeked of parsley. I was like, kill me. It was too much. But, and then for dinner that day, I was like lazy. So I'm like, I'll just have some cucumbers. And
Just have a bag of parsley.
garden cucumbers, thank you, not parsley. Yeah, but they were bitter. And so today I'm going to talk about bitter cucumbers.
Okay.
So what I'm wondering is,
Does the parsley have anything to do with this, or that was
No.
just your intro? Okay.
yeah, it was just the fact that oh, sorry. Sorry.
I was
No.
like gearing myself up. I'm like, I want to
I
learn
know.
about parsley.
No. We're talking
No,
about cucumbers.
suckers.
No. It does in the sense that I was like, oh, sorry. Yeah, stuff. So I was like, we took the last of the cukes as well. Right. Gathered our onions. Like, it was the whole thing. Like, you know, kind of end of season thing. Can I stop moving? Have I not learned my lesson?
No, you're fine.
But, so anyway, I also got cucumbers. I ate a bitter one and I was like, okay, what's going on? So my question at the time, while I was cleaning parsley, so yeah, it does kind of have something to do with it, was, I'll never forget the day cleaning parsley, looking out the window. When I asked, why on earth, how did we ever decide to cultivate cucumbers and were they bitter originally? So was the original cucumber plant that we found in the wild or whatever, was it bitter? And if it was bitter, why on earth did we keep eating it? Because humans generally, I thought, avoided bitter food because we forage.
An indication of like that it could be poisonous or something.
That's right.
Out in the
Yeah.
wild?
So like with mushrooms, for example, like if you take, because I sound like such a weirdo. Like I have farm food and I forage for mushrooms, but
That's
it's
not
not
weird.
really like that. Anyway, I do those things.
But it also is.
Yeah, right?
You're
It's
a
kinda like-
forager.
But I'm not. Like it's like I am, but I'm not. It's one specific mushroom. But anyway, when you pick mushrooms, you can take a bit of the flesh and just put it on your tongue, and if it's bitter, then it's not necessarily like, you know, one you want to.
Okay.
Mind you, some mushrooms I'm sure are bitter like that, and if you cook the heck out of them for 17 hours,
Yeah.
they're fine to eat. Like even the ones that my mom eats, because I don't like wild mushrooms. I pick them, but I don't eat them. A lot of people don't like them because they're still a little bit bitter, but she just cooks them for 17 hours and it's like, they're fine, apparently. Whatever. But yeah, so I'm like, okay, bitterness, that must be a bad thing. Like, why on earth would we eat, you know? And so, went down the rabbit hole of cucumber bitterness. Ready?
And I don't even know what a bitter cucumber would taste like. I feel like cucumbers are all
Really?
pretty like mellow.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe
That's
it's
really
maybe it's only because I only
Why is
eat
that
the
surprising?
one kind from the store, like the English cucumbers,
Oh,
right?
okay.
There's probably other kinds,
Yeah, I just
like
took it
the
for granted that
pickling ones and
everyone
the blah,
would
blah,
have
blahs.
cucumbers like from the garden. We always had some. So, yeah, it's extremely bitter.
You have a way with words. I'll give you that.
Thank you. It's not sweet. No. It's like this weird bitterness that's like the only thing I can think of is like if you mixed with a weird, like if you bit into cardboard and you were like, get this out of my mouth right now. I don't want this in my mouth. It's like this grossness. So, and it doesn't taste like cucumber. It's just that,
Okay.
like, and I
Just
don't know
cardboard bitter. Okay.
what is bitter. Like, I can't think of other bitter flavors.
Um,
Like other bitter foods. Hold on, let me Google because, right? That's such a funny thing. I can't think of. We say bitter.
bitter foods. Well, now
Let's
that
see.
it's getting to be that we've said bitter too much and it's
I
not a word anymore.
know. I know. Well, people say, oh, like cranberries, coffee, citrus peel, but this is a different kind.
Okay.
And that actually has a.
It's a specific cucumber bitter.
But guess what? There are different kinds of bitterness.
Ooh, okay. Do
Okay.
tell.
All right. So I looked up the history of cucumbers because I had no idea where they came from, who, like how
Yeah.
far back they went, right?
Yeah.
Um, wait, where's my
I
thing?
love
Okay, so
cucumbers because they give me pickles and I love pickles. Thanks, cucumbers.
oh my gosh, the end.
Yeah. Done. Now my turn.
I know I have to hurry up. Okay,
No.
so I'll just read a quick little thing. It's generally agreed that cucumbers originated in India and have been under cultivation for at least 3,000 years. Okay.
Oh.
It does sound like it goes back further, but this is just the general thing that's going around the internet that they're
Okay.
3,000 years old. And it's from India.
Okay.
The plant was introduced into China and then into the West. Both the Greeks and the Romans knew about the cucumber. And then I read about and then it all traveled. But I don't care about going forward. I kind of wanted to go back, right?
Yeah.
So, but it was kind of funny because apparently the Romans were like obsessed with cucumbers, particularly, who was it? A particular leader. I forgot who it was though, sorry. But yeah, he demanded to have them every day. And they
No
actually
way.
invented a sort of greenhousey kind of system so that they could keep growing them all year long. And I'm
No
like,
way.
that's pretty funny. So people love
That's
their
crazy.
cucumbers.
It's like really dedicated to the cucumber.
Yeah.
Cool.
And again, those specific facts were just chef's kiss. All right. So, it's a little side note. I don't know if anyone cares, but I wondered what part of why cukes can be bitter sometimes because the ones we grow now, they kind of technically shouldn't be, right? So it depends on how they're grown. They're stressed, they tend to become bitter. And it's the stem and the leaves that are bitter, but sometimes it will kind of the bitterness will seep down into the actual fruit.
Ah.
And so, yeah. That's why, if you just kind of bite one end of a bitter cucumber, just flip it over, and usually the other end isn't bitter.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, and
Unless
the
it's
bitterness.
been in there for a really long time and then it travels all the way? Does it ever travel all the way?
I mean, probably, yeah, because I've had a completely bitter
Right.
cucumber before, and that's when I cry and just throw it out. So the thing specifically in cucumbers that is bitter, it's called. I had to do you ever do this where you Google the pronunciation of words?
Yeah, and it doesn't help me.
It doesn't help you. They have videos where they
Oh,
say
where
it.
they say it? Oh, see, I don't like videos. I just do the phonetic when they spell it out. I'm like, that still doesn't
Yeah,
make sense to
I've
me.
listened to this, I think maybe 10 times. Do I remember it? No, but it's like cucurbitacin or bitacin, I think they say.
Cool.
Cucurbitacin. That's the little bitter compound in there. I'm like, fine,
It's
okay, I
very
know how
specific.
to. And so I learned about how to not make them bitter, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, wonderful. And I was going down the whole history. Okay, I kind of want to skip this because I thought that would be really important, the history of how we found them. But I don't know. I don't want to waste time with that because
I'm on the edge of my seat.
wait, I'm still looking. Where's my stuff? Yeah, they're like, what makes cucumbers bitter? And it's just that cucurbitacin. There's a B and C compound, and yeah, it's just
All kind of chemistry stuff.
right. But this is where we get into the thing. So I'm just going to kind of read little chunks. Again, I don't have the energy to be like writing this all down, making it sound good, whatever.
Copying
So just
and pasting
deal with
it
me.
like I do.
Right? Okay, so this is from Science and Food, UCLA, somebody's blog, okay? I'm just going to read this blurb first. Bitter tasting substances are innately disliked by infants and children, presumably because most bitter compounds are toxic, right? So that's what I was thinking where I'm like,
Right.
okay, we should avoid it because it's toxic. So what on earth were we doing as humans back in the day?
Yeah.
Most children are drawn to all things sickeningly sweet, but as adults, we enjoy eating bitter Brussels sprouts and have bitter coffee and that kind of stuff, right? We learn to enjoy the taste of mildly bitter foods, especially when paired with positive metabolic and pharmacological outcomes. The more your body benefits from an ingested food, the more palatable it becomes. So I was like,
No way. What?
okay. So it sounds like we eat something and even after, like words when, like it makes sense. Like if you eat something and you get violently ill, you're going to avoid that thing,
Yeah.
right? And I thought, okay, but apparently your body can recognize, like it'll remember the taste of something, but like it can recognize the positive effects of a food, right? So
That's
it's like,
crazy.
yeah, so taste isn't just about like the flavor on your tongue, apparently. And I kind of stumbled across somewhere where it said like you might have like taste receptors in other parts of your body, like
You
all
do in
over
your
the place.
nose. In your nose, you do.
Right,
That's
but
why
I
you
mean,
can taste the smell.
the word testicle came up, and I'm like,
What? Your
I might come
balls
up later.
can taste.
Well, it's not like that. It's just like kind of like the connection between. Yeah, I don't know. It's this whole thing that I did not want to get into because I'm like,
wow, that's quite the
it's
rabbit
complicated.
hole. Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's so cool though that you can get like that your body learns and will
yeah.
like shift itself almost like your taste buds do your taste buds shift to like
Well, here,
not taste it as
I'll
bitter?
read this a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit.
keep
So,
going. Sorry.
our bodies require phytonutrients such as flavonoids that cannot be physically separated from their vegetable carriers. Humans learn to tolerate low levels of bitterness in foods as they co-occur with nutrients in plants through a post-digestive reward-punishment system. For example, rhubarb contains oxalic acid, a substance that in large doses can cause joint pain and fatal kidney stones. The first time a child eats rhubarb, the initial taste response tells the brain that the food is bitter, toxic, and should be avoided. However,
Yeah.
as the body begins to benefit from the essential nutrients in rhubarb without suffering any damage, the rhubarb becomes more and more palatable. Experiments show that rats can very quickly learn associations between tastes and metabolic and physiological consequences, perhaps in a matter of days. These associations occur after only a single trial and are strong enough to resist fading away even after multiple presentations of the food with no physiological consequences. That was a mouthful, but
Whoa.
yeah, right? So it looks like even just after, one taste, and it could be days that your body recognizes, oh no, there's a benefit here. And then somehow the food becomes palatable to us.
Wow, that's crazy.
Right? And I'm thinking like,
Our bodies are so smart.
but think about like I guess, trial and error. Like, because what if one person eats just too much rhubarb and they're puking their guts out or they're dead or whatever. What was it? Joint pain, fatal kidney stones.
Oh God.
And they're like, I'm not touching that. Right?
Yeah.
But then some other person's like, well, actually,
Actually, it's fine.
I'm feeling pretty good. Maybe it's fine.
Maybe don't eat so much.
I don't trust that amount of time. Like if days go by.
But I also think, though, because anything in small doses, unless something's really lethal, you might get a little bit sick from it, but you're not going to get, like, crazy, like, die instantly from everything. Some stuff is so poisonous, and that's, you avoid it, you try to spit it out or throw up right away. Mm-hmm. But the stuff that it's not that strong of a reaction, where it's just bitter, it's not, like, it's not going to make you sick or upset your system or anything like that.
Right.
It's just
But
like a little dose of it. It's like,
Is
you
the
know how people
benefit
can
even worth
get
it?
used to, but you know how people can get used to like poisons and stuff, right? Like remember
True.
Princess Bride, right? Like he worked up a tolerance to it. So if we can do that with something that's a poison that it will kill somebody instantly, the idea is like you could
But
do it
just
with
so you can eat
something.
a cucumber? I
Yeah, because their
can't
health benefits
imagine.
are phenomenal.
Are
How
they
else are you going to
though?
get that water in your system?
Oh yeah, I was gonna Google the nutrition thing of they are nutritious, I think. Question mark.
Well, I
Let's
think like
see.
the skin is probably like
It
fiber
has all
and
of it.
shit,
Yeah.
right?
And that's where a lot of the bitterness is too.
Yeah.
So
That's so
let's
crazy
see.
though. Also,
What are the
such a
benefits of eating cucumbers? Oh, it's high in nutrients,
oh
antioxidants, promotes hydration,
yeah. See,
may
I was
lower blood sugar, it could promote regularity.
oh, so it's like great.
Poisoning you and your but I'm regular.
Metamucil did it again.
Okay.
Just a funny side note before
Hmm.
you continue. So I grew up like lived on a farm for the first few years of my life,
And
and
you never had farm cucumbers?
yeah, we did. I just don't remember having like bitter cucumbers.
Ah,
Maybe
okay.
our cucumbers were
Don't.
better than yours.
Shut up. There was a drought this year.
But one of my all-time favorite pictures of me and my brother and my sister is us sitting there. I must have been maybe like 2 or something. I've got dirt all over my face. I'm not holding a puppy, but both my brother and my sister are like holding these little puppies in one
You
arm.
weren't allowed to hold animals. That'll be another story for another time.
I know. I was obsessed. Just squeezing them to death practically. I was so cute. Anyway, we're all sitting there with like a huge piece of rhubarb each, but it's not like red rhubarb. It was very green, which is like the most sour, bitter. But we're happily sitting there, obviously just chomping away on this like green rhubarb. Like, what the heck was happening here? Like, how did my mama allow this to happen? Why did we let it happen? This is crazy.
Although
So we
sourness,
must have conditioned ourselves pretty early in life to
true,
that
but
bitterness.
sourness is enjoyable in a weird, like, because I
That's
love
true.
sour candy. It's just like
Yeah.
lethal,
Yeah,
but
what is that? That's your next one to
yeah,
do. Yeah.
I know, right? Write it down. But yeah, but bitterness is vile. Like, there's no thrill in like, can I overcome the sourness? No, it's just
Right.
get this bitter thing the heck away from me. It's just vile. But anyway, rhubarb. You guys didn't dip it in sugar?
No. Not then. I mean, we have like at other
Sounded
times, but
so snooty
we
about it. No,
no.
ew.
What kind of self-respecting farm kid would dip something in sugar first? We
Look,
weren't allowed to
city
have
folk
sugar.
dipped everything in sugar.
That was probably a
or
treat for
mayonnaise,
us.
carrots and mayo. That was our big.
Oh my god,
our
mayonnaise.
dip.
We never dipped carrots in mayonnaise.
It's really good.
Surprisingly, we just dipped all the bad stuff in mayonnaise because we're Dutch. So like chips, fries, anything else,
I
any
never had chips in
potato product, we would put mayonnaise.
Smart. We did chips and ketchup.
Yeah, that's weird. We did chips in.
What do you mean that's
If you
weird?
do Ripple chips in mayo, it's the best thing you've ever had.
I believe it.
Okay,
But
good.
Ripple
We agree.
chips and ketchup is pretty good. All right.
I'm not convinced.
No, you eat ketchup chips, don't you?
Yeah,
Well,
I like my ketchup
Okay.
to be more fake than that.
how dare you? You and your fake mac and cheese, your fake ketchup, fine. Your sweet cucumbers.
Sweet cucumber.
Okay. So I was like, okay, let's go down the bitterness rabbit hole here. Okay. Everything's a rabbit hole, apparently. Just reading is a rabbit hole. In the early 1990s, researchers used bitter probes to identify individuals who experience all tastes more intensely. What the hell am I reading here? Oh, yeah. Okay, so blah, blah, whatever, not important. More recently, we have learned humans have 25 different bitter taste genes.
What?
And seems each one is tuned to pick up a different group of chemicals.
No way.
Right?
What?
So that cucurbitacin or whatever, or pitacin, I mean, It might be part of right? It could have been like this very specific thing that our body was like, okay, this bitterness, like from mushrooms, that's a no-no, and we never evolved, like, right? Like, we're not gonna
Yeah.
train ourselves to eat poisonous mushrooms. But like,
Or
so I
are
was
we?
like, okay. So it says, it turns out that different bitter foods act through different receptors, and people can be high or low responders for one but not another. Thus, you may despise grapefruit but have no problem with black coffee. So
That's
bitterness
me.
just
I
got
hate grapefruit.
so. What you do?
Yeah.
Oh my
It's
gosh. Do we
so
even know
bitter
each
to
other?
me. Who are you?
I know.
But I can drink black coffee if I want to. I had to train
Me too.
myself, though, to
Me
do
too.
it without sugar.
It's how we perceive the taste of bitter foods and whether we like or dislike them, at least initially, depends on which versions of taste receptor genes a person has. So, and it says those genes affect dietary choices, such as whether we eat enough vegetables, drink alcoholic beverages, enjoy citrus fruits, and blah, blah, blah. So,
Whoa.
some people can taste bitter things that other people can't. And that led me to this whole study that was done. They actually went to Africa. It was a whole complicated thing. They had to bring, like, they said it was a lot of work. I don't know who the researchers were.
They just taunted a
Research.
bunch of, like, starving African people with bitter food. Here, try this.
Oh, kind of. No, they weren't starving. But yeah, they realized that, like, geographically, they were just kind of all over the place. And it didn't really matter where the people were. They just all had different kind of, like, reactions to bitter food. So I was like, well, that doesn't help me because if it's not like a region, right? Like, you'd think if in a certain part, like a certain group of people, if that you can trace them back genetically, right, to like East Africa or whatever, you know, you think, well, so how are I still am not satisfied in figuring out, well, like, how did ancient humans decide? Yes, let's eat cucumbers; they're good for us. It's like I
But
just
I think that,
don't.
like, if. But even, like, if there was somebody who's like, it's super bitter and I can't eat this,
Yeah,
fine. But then somebody else would, because their bitterness taste buds or whatever, all those 25
true, but
things
it's not like they were
were
all.
less.
It's just, maybe it's just my concept of ancient, like, people. Like, really, I mean, like, super, super, like, back in the day. I just assumed there'd be, like, a spokesperson in a way. Or just a few people who would decide, okay, let's grow this. Like, kind of the leaders of the group.
Right.
It doesn't
But
seem like it would just be
maybe,
random
but it
foraging.
could be like that there was somebody, because now, even with farmers where they're like, oh, I'm going to plant a bit of this and a bit of that, but my main crop is going to be this big thing, right? So they kind of keep some stuff going.
Right.
But I mean, if you look at that Roman emperor guy, like, that could have been a huge turning point in the popularity of cucumbers if he was so obsessed
Yeah.
with it, and they were like, hey, we can make a ton of money because the emperor wants it, and everybody, all the cool people,
That's true.
they want to be like him or whatever. It's like a trendy thing. So then they start
Right.
growing a bunch of it, and some probably kept growing it, and it became
That I
popularized in that
understand.
way.
It's just
The beginning stages of it.
yeah, where, how could we get past this is bitter, this is
But because not all of them are
dangerous?
bitter. It would be the one-off ones, and they're like, okay, this
Right,
one
but
is
are
bitter.
they? And I couldn't find anything about that
Oh,
where it's like, I mean, I think someone mentioned like that the original cucumbers probably were bitter,
right.
but it wasn't anything, it didn't seem like a conclusive, statement.
Maybe
So I
they
was like,
learned
oh,
that if they took the peel off, the inside wasn't bitter at some point. Like, maybe there was some kind of thing where they were literally starving, and they're like, okay, this is kind of gross, but it's not going to kill us. And
right.
then they ended up getting more used to it,
Could
right?
be. Yeah.
In
I
certain
mean,
regions. And then as those people start traveling, rolling displacement, then they
true.
start traveling, and they're like, hey, this is a little bit bitter to be, it's kind of gross, but it's going to be really good later.
Yeah. I mean, because the ones now, like, they're completely different from the original, right? So we cultivated them to be bigger. And that's the thing, too. They're much bigger, huge now. And back then, they were probably just like small. And
Just
if
the
they were
little
bitter, they
pickle
were probably
ones?
just bitter. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, but
Do you
now listen
think
to
so?
this.
Is that how they started? Just little pickle ones, and then we
Yeah,
like.
it was
Whoa.
written down somewhere. We did cultivate them, so they were nice and big and juicy. It's like
Wow.
melon. It's like any kind of
It's like
like most, I think,
anything.
fruits and veggies. They all start pretty darn tiny, and
Wow.
then we just alter them because we're like, this is good. Let's make a giant watermelon. Anyway,
Humans.
okay, listen to this. So I found on NPR an article. Says, why can we taste bitter flavors? Turns out it's still a mystery. I'm like, wait, what? Okay, listen to this. I'm just reading the internet to you.
Okay.
It's short.
I'm
About
gonna listen.
a million years ago, one tiny change in DNA gave our ancestors the ability to perceive a bitter compound common in olives, nuts, and seeds. Scientists reported in Molecular Biology Evolution. Anyway, that means the bitter tasting mutation was present long before modern humans existed. And it stuck around as we evolved in Africa about 200,000 years ago. But here's the twist. The mutation probably didn't arise and persist for the reason that most of us think. People in the past have thought that bitter taste perception may have evolved for avoiding toxic substances. If you're a hunter-gatherer, you don't want to eat a poisonous plant. A bitter taste tells you immediately to avoid it. Right? And it's like,
Yeah.
okay. And where is this thing? Oh yeah, so she's saying we don't actually quite know why it evolved yet. In Africa, she found that people's ability to detect bitter tastes varied by geography, but it had nothing to do with what they ate or how they got their food. So, if bitter sensing didn't help our ancestors avoid poisonous plants, why have the genes stuck around for so long? No one is really sure yet. This was in 2013. I'm not sure if there's more.
Right. Something more recent research on it.
These genes could be detecting a compound we don't know anything about, she says, or they could be performing a task that's completely unrelated to taste altogether. In the past few years, scientists have started to realize that bitter taste receptors are all over the body. These receptors have turned up in cells in the gut, lungs, and even the testes. There's that fact. So the receptors are not only altering how we perceive food, but probably also our physiology in ways we have no idea about.
Whoa. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And so, like, the first things for bitterness was, like, nuts and olives and
Olives,
stuff.
and yeah.
So stuff that's,
And
like, high in, like oils, like, high in fats.
mm-hmm.
Basically.
Yeah. But then I looked, there's a very kind of like specific study with like all these kinds of, the jargon, technical words and everything. But this little blurb stood out for me. So again, they were looking at this bitterness and the specific gene called TAS2R16. The current work examines the related gene, that one, which codes for a molecular receptor that binds salicin. Salicin is a chemical found naturally in willow bark, the source of aspirin. It acts as an anti-inflammatory, but in large doses can be toxic. It is also found in many nuts, fruits, and vegetables. So it sounds like all these, like, remember how they were saying they were like the different genes?
Yeah.
So, and that they might, I don't know what the word is, but like, it's almost like our body, like bitterness sounds like it has a huge part in like what kinds of foods we go for. Like if something has aspirin-like qualities, anti-inflammatory stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I still don't know what the benefit really of cucumbers would be over like an apple.
Though? You know what it could be, though, is that like it's possible that it has nothing to do with us, with the human part. Maybe it has more to do with the plant. Because acacia trees in Africa are the trees that giraffes love eating. And if a giraffe could just stand there and just eat the entire tree, it would do that. But they give off, after a certain period of time, and when they know that a giraffe is eating their leaves, after a certain period of time, that tree starts giving off like a bitterness and giving off a different thing. And it also gives off pheromones to warn the other trees that are downwind from that tree that to start producing that thing that makes it a bit bitter in order to protect it so that they're not completely eaten, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I wonder if that's a bit more, like maybe if they can't figure out what purpose it serves from the human side, maybe it's because it serves it doesn't serve a purpose for us, but it serves a purpose for the plants. And yeah, maybe it doesn't have anything to do with us, but it has to do more with the plants and like what they need and nature, right? Like keeping the balance there.
Yeah, they would be full of seeds too. Maybe they were just kind of like, human, spread the seeds around, please. Kind of like, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I'm done. That's it.
Okay.
I mean, what did you want?
That was awesome. I feel like I'm like mentally going down a rabbit hole right now where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's
Right?
crazy. I can't believe that they don't know.
And I love that I don't
Why
have
is there-
answers. And I never will.
Well, who cares? Nobody has answers.
This
to
expert
anything.
comes along. No, I know the answer. Shh, sir.
No, you sit over there. Be
Yeah,
quiet.
put a pillow over his face.
You have no answers.
All right, I'm excited.
Okay,
What's
here
yours?
we go. Okay, so I don't really know how this came about. Oh, I guess I was chatting with a friend of mine and asking her, like, hey, I'm doing this podcast. Like, what are some things that you would want to know about, like the beginnings of something, where it started, why it came about, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And she didn't really know, but she was kind of like, we just kind of started talking and she was like, probably a lot of sports terminology would be, because so much of it doesn't make any sense and we don't know where it came from. And so the biggest one for me, I think, that has always kind of bothered me, and I never bothered to look it up before, even though it's pretty straightforward and kind of makes sense, is why in North America and a few other countries we call it soccer and everywhere else they call it football.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
always bothered me so much because it's you don't know what to call it, right? Like, and it was funny because going to South Africa, so my husband Greg is from South Africa, and when I was there, I kind of asked him, I was like, do you guys call it football or do you call it soccer? And there they actually call it soccer, which is kind of weird because
Really?
the British had a
Oh.
major influence there, so it's kind of weird that they don't call it football. It's a little odd. I don't know.
But
And they don't
maybe
really have
as a like sticking it to the Brits, like just wanting to
maybe. I don't
distance
think they've
themselves
put
or
that
something?
much thought into it, though. Not to be down
Okay.
on South Africans. I just, well, I guess I can look that up. I don't know.
Wait,
So
can I just? Sorry, I have to just say, it drives me insane that your husband's name is Greg because since I saw Kids in the Hall, Gregory is one of my joke names.
It's still my joke name.
Right?
Gregory.
Greg, good. Like it was one of my favorite sketches of Kids in the Hall where they condensed the name Greg, and it's just like I can't. Anyway, so now you may continue.
It's funny because it was a name that was like, I don't know any other Gregs. And so for a long time, I don't know, it was hard to get his name like stuck in my head because it was such a non-name in my universe. It was weird. Anyway, that's a story for a whole different podcast. Probably.
Whole podcast.
Well, yeah, exactly.
The story of Greg.
It's just silence the entire time. Cricket, cricket. Okay, so for the information here, I got most of the information off of Britannica.com and the Huffington Post because they had there's tons of articles about this. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward history. Oh, I was going to kind of start looking into the history of soccer itself. And I went down that rabbit hole for about 5 minutes. And then I was like, whoa, this is like, it's too much. There are so many variations of a game like soccer that started all over the world at different places. Like you've got the Mayans that were doing stuff. You've got like all these different kinds of things. And it was too much. So I'm like, I'm just going to stick to why do we call it soccer?
Right.
So football or soccer originated in England, the actual official, like the game as we know it today.
Okay.
And we often assume that the word soccer came from America, that it was created in North America, but the word is actually British in origin.
What?
I know. So why in North America and a few other places around the world do we call it soccer? So in 1863, England, they formed a football association. And that was when they first wrote down the set of rules for the game that we know as soccer, football now. So that's largely, even though there were variations of the game that existed like throughout history, that was when everybody says it began now because they actually wrote down the rules for it.
Okay.
So that's the official beginning. At the time, it wasn't the only game of its kind.
Do you think other countries that were also playing soccer just resented the fact that because the Brits were like, we wrote down the rules, so this is how it's going to be? Like, what if they don't, right? That's a whole interesting thing.
It is a whole interesting thing. I don't know other information about it, but I'm sure it's probably that thing of like, there's probably some guy sitting around being like, like they were just a bit too lazy or procrastinated a bit too much. And they're like, but I play that game. Damn it. But as you will learn, everybody kind of there are places that had their own versions of football and they kind of created their own little things. So like Aussie rules football. Like in Australia, they've got their own kind of thing.
Oh, okay, so they didn't just like bend over backwards and just accept.
Yeah, but generally now, the game that we know as soccer, pure soccer now, is based on these rules that were put in place by the Football Association in 1863 in England.
Okay.
So at the time, it wasn't the only game of its kind. There was also rugby football, which was similar but varied in some major ways. The game played under the Football Association's rules became known as association football. So the students at the University of Oxford in the 1880s, they distinguished between the sports of rugger, which was rugby football, and a soccer. So like ass, and then O-C-C-E-R, A-S-S-O-C-C-E-R, which was association football, which was further shortened to soccer, and the name quickly spread beyond the campus.
Wait, let's say that again slower, because this is cool.
So, well, I'll explain the next sentence, and then I'll go back and kind of say it again. So, Oxford University, there is a linguistic phenomenon known there that happened in the 1880s at this time that was known as the Oxford ER, like the Oxford So students from Oxford University used to add the colloquial suffix ER to shorten words. They did it so it would be easier and quicker to pronounce them. And it's actually like a thing that they did with quite a few words. And I kind of went down that rabbit hole too of if that even was a term or they were just kind of, saying it or whatever. But there's all these ones and they're like, some words aren't considered part of this Oxford ER thing and others, that's where it originated from.
What?
So soccer is one of those. Okay, so I'll go back and kind of repeat what I said before. So rugby football became known as rugger, which now is what we know as rugby. But they called it rugger. And then association football, which is what we know as soccer and what they now know, just call it football there, was association football, was a soccer. So it was soccer, but with an AS in the front of it. So association was shortened, but they made it a hard...
So that explains the AS.
Yeah.
Like the O, like up to C. Oh.
So it's weird because, so it's association... It's association made shorter, but they changed the soft C into a hard C.
Yeah.
Right? Which is weird. Yeah. But some people even spelled it back then. Some people even spelled soccer with S-O-C-K-E-R.
Oh.
To make sure that it was differentiated, that it should be a hard C. Like they were adamant about it has to be a hard C.
Really?
Like, okay, people, that's not. But that's where the word itself started from.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that crazy?
That is so cool and stupid.
And like so basic, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but soccer never became more than a nickname in Great Britain. It was just, they always called it football or association football, and some people would call it soccer. By the 20th century, rugby football was more commonly just called rugby, while association football had earned the right to be known as just plain football. So you're differentiating between the two there. So you've got football now and you've got rugby as the two separate games.
Right.
So I was like, okay, that's really cool. That's like where the term originated. But now why did we end up keeping it in North America? But in Britain, it just was, they go by football. And most other places go by football. Because, I mean, it makes sense. You use your foot to play the game and kick a ball. So in the late 19th century, a sport emerged.
Wait, before you say it, my guess is that they're going to be like, you know, when kids have clubs or like there's like the fandom, those like where people are like, this is really what it's called, or this is like the true way to pronounce something, or to like, you know, it's kind of like, my guess is that it's sort of like, I know what I'm talking about. This is like, I was there when it, like, you know, kind of cool kid terminology. Anyway, go on.
I think that's how it's ended up being, but that's not how it started.
Okay.
So, in the late 19th century, a sport emerged in the U.S. that borrowed elements of both rugby and association football. And it became more popular than both of those sports and was known as gridiron football. So, like the NFL, National Football League, American football, basically. But most people didn't bother putting the gridiron in front of it, also because that's a stupid name. And I was going to write down, I'm like, that's what I also want to look up. Like, why is it called gridiron football? And I remember when I very first saw it written down, I read it as like gridiron. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, what is happening? It seems like such a hard to pronounce word. I'm like, it's gridiron. I remember being very confused when I first saw it. I was like, I am out of my element here.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Stupid.
Gridiron.
Okay, so most people didn't bother putting that gridiron in front of it, so it became known only as football. And as a result, American Association football players increasingly adopted the word soccer to refer to their sport.
What is happening? Oh my God, sorry. A lot of noise happening around me.
They're playing a soccer.
Gridiron. No, what did you say?
Gridiron soccer. Gridiron. Oh my God.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, so basically just because gridiron football was so popular, and it was kind of like coming about at the same time that soccer was like coming about in the United States, they just went with, because people were using the term soccer as like a nickname, so they were like, well, let's just use soccer more often to differentiate it completely from this other game, football, that's so popular. So the United States Football Association, which had formed in the 1910s, changed its name to the United States Soccer Football Association in 1945.
Okay.
And later, it took out the word football altogether. So you can kind of see like the evolution as like gridiron football became more popular. They were like, oh no, we need to put soccer in here so people know the difference. And then eventually they took the football association, like the football term, out of it entirely, and it became just the soccer association. And soccer tends to be the name that's used in countries that have competing forms of football. So in Canada, we've got our football, like the CFL, Canadian Football League, like our own type of football. Ireland has Gaelic football. I don't know what the hell that is like, but I was gonna say something like
your prejudice is showing.
No, it really is. I love Irish people; they're great. And Australia has like Aussie rules football. So in those places, they tend to call it soccer more than football, because they've got a football
Right.
another football game that they're playing that's very popular.
Huh.
So by the 1980s, the British stopped using the term soccer, seemingly because it had become too American.
What?
And this decline in them using that term coincided with the increased usage and the popularity of the sport in the US by 1980. So the North American Soccer League was at its high point in 1980, and that directly corresponded with the British not using that term at all anymore, because they're like, no, they see it as almost a derogatory term now.
Oh my gosh.
It's
But-
like the use of the word soccer is a real sticking point with the British. Like when I was looking up stuff, like researching this, a bunch of stuff came up of British people who were either sports commentators or just fans leaving messages or whatever on places.
Yeah.
They were so derogatory
Wait, okay, hold
towards
on.
American soccer.
But it started just like because they wanted to preserve this, right? Like the original, they wanted to differentiate, like they wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
people recognize soccer for what it was, right? And it seems like, what? It seems
Well, it's
odd that they
because-
would turn against it.
But it's because it goes back to like the British American kind of rivalry in that sense, I think. And that's where, when you were talking about earlier how, oh, it's like more like an exclusive club, like you're not doing it properly if it's not called this or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's become in England, because they are very proud of the fact that they created that game, that it started there, that it originated
But they also
there.
started soccer, like the name, the word it came from them.
But they're very much like, I think they're very protective of it and very much like, well, no, if you call it soccer, you're not really doing it properly. It's more just it's an excuse to be mad at America, I think,
That's
generally.
so funny and stupid. In
I
a way.
kind of get it. But I do think that's part of why I wanted to look it up, because I was like, is it really bad that we call it soccer? Like, does it make us less than, or, like stupid, even though it's just a game, right? Like, who cares?
Yeah.
But I think it leads to all those other thoughts of, oh, we're not playing it right, or we're not as legitimate, or we're not as,
And lay people know that it's like a, sticking point. Like I know, as in like people who aren't actually like British or in the actual industry or whatever. It's like, because my brother-in-law, if I say soccer, he'll like rib me. They're like, oh, it's football, right? Like, because he's a fan, right? So he likes to tease.
But he plays soccer.
Oh no, he
calls it
does,
soccer,
and he
isn't
coaches
Yeah.
it. Yeah, but he, it's just funny. Like he just calls it soccer too.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do it. But he just knows enough that it is a joke, right? That's what I mean.
Right. But I think like that's interesting, because like when I travel and you go to places and you're not supposed to call it soccer in a way. Like all
But
my
that's
cousins
just-
in Holland,
now I'm
they
even more
play.
angry because it sounds like no, it's originally Oxford people came up with it.
Because
It's
it was
a
one of the
slang.
first names for it. That's one of the first
Yeah,
names for soccer.
and they should
Because at
embrace
that
it, and
time
it's
they
so
had to
cute.
differentiate still. So it was started at the very beginning.
Right.
I was just so shocked that it was created
Wait, sorry.
by them.
Can you remind me what they were differentiating
Between rugby
soccer?
football,
Right.
and association football.
Right.
So now rugby is its own thing completely. Like it's its own.
So they were like,
It's not
okay, so
even
now let's
considered
just call
football.
this football. So.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then the rugby people.
They don't call it rugby football. They just call it rugby.
No, I know. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
I
isn't
just
that
feel
crazy?
like
I
it's
thought it was insane
stupid.
when I first looked it up, where I was like, the British created this, and it was one of the first, like,
Yeah.
kind of things that it was called in
Yeah.
a way. And they're so hard on North Americans for calling it soccer, but it's this. You guys came up with that term,
Right?
You can't get mad at us for it now.
I know. And it's almost like
But it's-
we're the cool ones and the right ones because that was right.
But it's almost that thing. It is almost that thing of like, when someone makes, makes fun of your family member or something, or your friend or whatever, you're like, no, only I'm allowed to say that. Like, only I'm allowed to, because I'm so close to it. Only we're allowed to have this nickname.
Yeah, you're right.
And this like special thing. Or even with nicknames, like terms of endearment, like, ooh, we don't know you well enough for you to be calling it that, you know?
But the
like
people
that
who
kind of thing.
went to the States and brought the sport over were British too, so it's kind of like...
Yeah. Oh, but that's why it's so stupid, because people are just stupid, and like we're just, you know, like
we're just stupid.
We're just stupid. So everyone get over yourselves. Go eat a bitter cucumber and shut up. But yeah, that's mine. Mine was like kind of short and sweet this time, but I just thought it was so crazy.
Oh my gosh, and now I'm even more angry.
Why?
And now I don't know which... No, because I don't know which term I want to use. Soccer or football, right?
I think we should just go back and say like association football. Just say the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know, just bring it back to its roots.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Go tell your brother-in-law.
All right. I'm going to tell I'm going to start a campaign to get soccer. To get soccer, like, what am I trying to say? What's this? Wait.
To reduce the stigma of using the term soccer.
No, I like your idea, the association soccer. I love it so much. But, okay, yeah, now you've really, like, I'm just going to be stewing about this all day.
What are you so angry about? Who cares?
Because.
Because what?
I love soccer, and I always wanted to call it football because I thought that's what I should call it, because I'm of European descent. And
right?
you know.
Because there are those connotations with it that you're more
Canada.
Legitimate if you call it football.
Yes.
Right?
But now,
there is a stigma
do I want to be a complete like poser and be like, oh, I'm going to call it soccer because that's how it started?
No, I think all that this means is just that you can like sass people who are like, actually, it's football, right? You can just be like, actually, did you know?
Who am I talking to?
Yeah, I know, right? Did you know that the British were the ones that first called it soccer, and you can tell them the whole spiel.
But that doesn't solve my problem
you're
of
done,
which word
they're
I
bored.
want to use.
Well, nobody can solve that problem except you.
Listen.
That was great. I learned a lot today. That was awesome.
Are you going to go eat a bitter cucumber?
You're going to go eat a bitter cucumber. I'm going to go...
Did you catch that?
Yeah. I'm going to go play some soccer.
Okay. I'm going to...
Some association football.
Stew over this.
All right. See you guys next week. Bye.